This controller's pretty awesome. This one's pretty gross, honestly, because I paid like $6 for it a while ago. Haven't bothered to clean it. It doesn't even have a battery pack, as you can see. But I definitely need to give this thing a bath. But I have it here for show, mostly. Might not be the best show, but a show nonetheless. Anyways, what's going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and I wanted to do one of these informal type of talking discussion videos. Because the topic of this video is, as you can see here, the Xbox 360. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, this is not going to happen, like, this isn't going to be uploaded the day it was announced, but on April 20th, 2016, 420, on April 20th of 2016, it was announced that the Xbox 360 has ceased production. These systems, of course these ones are the old ones, these are the fat ones, but the Xbox 360 as a whole, as of April 20th, is no longer being manufactured. That's it. So all the Xbox 360s on shelves in the wild and all that, that's all we have. There's never going to be an Xbox 360 manufactured again. And I wanted to talk about this, like talk about the system kind of from a retrospective piece and all that stuff, and just kind of give my thoughts on it, my opinions on it overall. Because there's a lot of stuff Microsoft screwed up with this system, right? This system is far from perfect. But there's also a lot of stuff that they did right with this. Whether they did it, you know, kind of they weren't predicting it was going to be like this, or it was done on purpose. We saw quite a bit with these systems, and I wanted to talk about that here. So, first off, I kind of wanted to share my experience, my first experience with the Xbox 360. I remember it coming out at the time, I was in 7th grade, and it came out November 22nd of 2005. Now, I wasn't really interested in one, right? Because at the time, I think I had one of these things, actually. And I swear not, I had to think of the dates. It's not like I was just like, you know, planning that or anything, but I had one of these things right here. I had an original Xbox, and not just an original Xbox. I'd actually soft modded my original Xbox as well too. So I was like, oh dude, I don't need one of these things, man. It's fine. No way, I don't need that at all. I'm perfectly happy with this. Why would I spend $400 on a new system anyways? It's not like it has anything good on it yet. That was my thought on it, right? And honestly, I'm happy I didn't get one at the beginning, because I remember there was one kid I knew who I had several classes with. From what I know, it was him, his family, and his neighbor's family. They went to Walmart and they stayed in line for them, and they got the system, and you know, the games were $60 at the time. That was huge, because games were normally $50 at the time, so they were $60. You know, they got the premium editions, which was one of these white ones. It was a Xenon, which was the first motherboard to come out, had a 20 gigabyte hard drive and a wireless control. Like, that was the huge deal back then, right? Because you couldn't even install games onto the system at that time. Like, that was a system, that was a feature that was implemented later on. You had to play them right off the disc. And, excuse me, I mean, HDMI wasn't even on the first systems. I'll even show you guys this right here. This is one of the first models of them to come out. You flip it around here. The hard drive is removable, of course, but there's only a component composite port right here. There's no HDMI port like there are on the later revisions of the consoles. But the other one, it was going to be, there was the premium version, and there was the arcade version. And the arcade version did not have a hard drive with it. It had a wired controller. It was $300, and you could either buy a hard drive separately, or you could use a memory unit. And by the way, these things did not have internal storage. This thing did. This thing was a beast, man. And this thing is, God, these things are so heavy too. But anyways, I knew some people that got them, and they were telling me, oh yeah, you know, the system's so good, and it looks so great and everything, it looks so realistic. And I remember we weren't really buying it, because this guy who got his 360, he was telling me that, you know, this game was great. I think it was like one of the Need for Speed games came out, and he was telling me how good it looked. And we're like, well, dude, that's also on the original Xbox. He's like, yeah, but when you're driving, the water, like, splashes onto the screen. They're like, okay, that's worth, like, the $400 plus $60 upgrade? Like, we're not really buying it. So, there weren't that many people that were getting them at the time. And at least in my school, it was mostly from what I was seeing. There were a few people that got them. But most people that I saw, not in the school, but kind of outside, they were buying these things, you know, staying in line, getting like a $400 system, selling on eBay for like $1,500, $2,000, something like that. I mean, it was crazy, and people were willing to pay for that. And the crazier thing is, the first variants of these systems, this is where Microsoft started screwing up first, they weren't reliable at all. That's the biggest fault with the Xbox 360, honestly, because that not only financially hurt them, but it really harmed the image of the 360. You see, they were excuse me, still coughing, but they were really prone to the 3 red light issue, otherwise known as a general hardware failure or the red light of death, red rings of death, whatever you want to call it. What would happen is you would play the system. At one point, it was almost guaranteed your system would just die. That was it. And it took Microsoft a while for them to get this under control. Now, they had other variants, like they had, the Zephyr motherboard that came after that was essentially just one of these with HDMI. It was going to die anyways. My first model was a Zephyr. Then they had the Falcon, they had the Opus, which was a replacement for the Xenon, and then they had the Jasper, which the Jasper was like the last model of one of these things. And honestly, in my opinion, it was probably the most reliable motherboard out of all of them, including the Slims. But essentially what ended up happening with all that was really, it harmed the image completely. You pretty much had to buy one of these things knowing that it was going to die. And that was just such a negative connotation, essentially, especially when you could get these things, and they still worked. The PS2 worked, and you had all these old systems as well, too, like the Nintendo 64, the Super Nintendo, the original Nintendo that still worked just fine, but the 360 would die after like 3 months. Granted, later on they fixed it, but didn't do that well as is. Now, my first experience with it really, when I got my own, was, I'm going to move this Xbox off the table. I got one of these things right here. Of course, it had a hard drive on it. This isn't the exact one I got, but I got a Zephyr model, didn't know what it was. I just knew there was a black variant of it. I ended up getting the Xbox 360 Elite shortly after it came out. I got it July of 2007, and I got it for 3 technically. One, I figured, okay, might be kind of time to upgrade. This thing is nice, but they're going to stop making games for it. It's going to stop getting supported, all that stuff. Second reason was this game right here. Now, I actually have like the big Legendary Edition. I didn't want to bring it out on the desk. But Halo 3. Halo 3 I knew was going to be coming out later that year, in 2007. And I like Halo. That's really understating it, actually. I love the series. I really do. I would almost say I'm a fanboy of it, but the thing is I also acknowledge when there are major faults to it as well, too. So I do look at it from a critical perspective, but Halo 3 is a legendary game for many different reasons. And the second reason was in 2008, but one to get anyways, Grand Theft Auto 4. Now, of course, this is the whole episodes from Liberty City edition, and the reason why I was going to get it on there, instead of, getting a PlayStation 3, is because this had the Halo series. I enjoy the Halo series. This also had Grand Theft Auto. Now, some people might be saying, PlayStation 3 had Grand Theft Auto. Yeah, but at the time, this is where DLC was not standard. DLC wasn't even called DLC. It was called, there were these big things called expansion packs. You might have heard of them, I don't know. But essentially what happened was there were 2 expansion packs which we later got. They were, what the hell are they called? The Lost and Damned and The Battle of Gay Tony. I actually didn't even play them that much. Which is surprising, I really need to go back and play them. But essentially what happened was, at the beginning, Microsoft paid a lot of money to Rockstar to secure exclusivity for the DLC on the Xbox 360. And I was like, I'm a really big Grand Theft Auto fan, I'm going to buy the DLC anyways. I'm going to get the Xbox 360 because I want to play that. So that's why I chose the 360 over that. Granted, later on, they did put it on the PS3, and then they put everything on PC as well, too, even if the port's not that good. So it didn't stay exclusive, and that was the first time, we really saw a timed exclusive as well, too. At least for people like me, like my generation and everything. But no, even with Halo 3, what I loved about this was that it was a lot of stuff that was brand new to console gamers. And if it wasn't new, it was done properly. The matchmaking on here was great, kind of just an expansion off the Halo 2 matchmaking. They had file sharing. They had a Forge mode, which was building your own maps and everything. A theater system, which I thought was amazing at the time, where it was always recording your games. You could go back in, you could save your games, you could take screenshots of them, analyze them, replay them, all that stuff. I thought it was absolutely astounding. They pretty much built a peer-to-peer sharing network on this game, which was really awesome. Plus, the game was really fun, too. You could really tell, honestly, that they thought this was going to be the last Halo. Just playing the game for the first time, seriously, just if you ever play it for the first time, you go in completely blind, you just have the feeling this was supposed to be it. And Bungie knew it, and the developers knew it. Granted, we got 4 and 5 after that, but this was supposed to be the end of the trilogy, and there wasn't supposed to be any other Halos. You got that feeling from the game. You could really tell they poured their heart and soul into supporting the game pre-release, the game even shortly post-release. The multiplayer was handled very well, the campaign was excellent on there, just all that stuff. And it's still, from what I know, the 360 version, this version is still alive, which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, no, we got those two right there. But even with that, the funny thing is it kind of showed how badly people wanted another variant of a console. And by that I mean this was the standard for a while, right? You could only get a white Xbox 360, and then really you could only choose between if you wanted the arcade version with the matte white bezels, or if you wanted the premium edition, which came with the chrome bezels, like the chrome hard drive, the chrome disk drive tray thing, whatever, the cover, that's what I'm trying to say. So that's really what you had to choose from. People flipped out at this system just being black. That was it. That's kind of why I got it too, because I was going to get a 360 at the time. I was like, I want to get the best one, and so I ended up getting this thing right here. Not this exact one, of course. It later died, sent it back, died again, whatever. But then, even with the variants as well too, I like the 360 variants as well. The reason why I have this system out right here is because this is my favorite out of the the fat systems right here. Excuse me. I don't even know. No, this is a Falcon motherboard. This is my favorite out of all of them. The Halo 3 Special Edition, I mean, just look at this system. This system looks cool as hell. And I was really happy because I remember at the time, you're 14 years old, you don't really have all the money in the world to blow or anything, so I already had a 360. I couldn't go and justify buying another one, especially when this one had a 120 gigabyte hard drive and this one had a 20 gig hard drive. Couldn't justify that. But later on, I was able to get one of these and felt awesome getting it, so we ended up having that. So I thought the variants were really cool, and they did an awesome job with the special editions on these systems. I'll give them that. Now, even they went further on that. They also had, other variants, which the only other one I have right here is, the Xbox 360 Slim, which they did a good job on this system as well, too. It's much quieter, it runs cooler, smaller form factor, uses less power, all that other stuff. I think the hard drive right here, it's a crapshoot. I don't know if it'd be easier to replace or not, but either way, you can replace it easily enough. But it's going to be, supported better with that as well, too. And that was the nice thing with these systems, that you had a bunch of variety on them as well. And as one of my friends said before, Microsoft did an excellent job really fragmenting everything that they could. By that I meant it's like, okay, if you only have $200, like later on the arcade was only $200. If you just want a base system, you don't really care about it that much, you can get an arcade. It will have some built-in memory, not this one, but some built-in memory, well, storage, excuse me, and it will come with a few games. If you want to spend, $300, you're going to get a hard drive, you're going to get this other stuff. If you want to spend $400 or more, there's going to be variants of that. And Microsoft was able to capitalize on that quite early, and they were able to sell a lot of systems that way. Of course, also, they ended up selling a lot of systems because these things were very prone to failure. It got to the point where really nobody wanted a fat version of the system. People wanted the slims like this. I was working at a game store at the time when these were, becoming popular and everything. And it was one of those things where a lot of people just avoided the fat systems. They're like, no, we don't want one of those fat ones. We want the slim ones. So with that, the slims were always selling out. The fat ones, we always had them on hand. And I didn't really know the differences between, all the motherboards or anything like that. But we were fixing them as well, too. So that kind of helped out. Now, the nice thing with that was, because of that, a lot of people would get rid of their systems. And there were people like me that got into modding them and, cracking them open and fixing them up and everything. We could normally get these systems for pretty cheap. So actually, like my younger brothers, for example, it was kind of one of those things where I gave them a few 360s. Later on, I did give them, a super reliable one, two of them actually, because one of them's flash, one of them's RJ tagged. But essentially with these, at first, I gave them, like Xenon systems. And they would play them, they'd die, they'd say, Danny, the system, it has red lights. I'd be like, okay, cool. So I'd go there, if I can do it on here, unhook the hard drive, take the system, move it off, grab another one from my stash of systems, put it in place, hook it up to the imaginary TV, put the hard drive on, there, you guys are good to go. And that was about it with that. So that also helped out quite a bit as well, too. Now, granted, it's also a major weakness of the system, just, not being nearly as reliable as it should, and I fully agree with that. But for people who want to fix them up, resell them, anything like that, that itself was a business. And the cool thing with this, too, was the 360 had a really huge modding scene. And I think it came from this system right here. Of course, people are going to want to crack open systems and consoles no matter what, but I mean, soft modding this thing, hard modding it, all that stuff was crazy. Especially, oh my god, on college campuses, I know it was a huge thing. Mainly because this system just had a stripped down, customized version of Windows. It had a hard drive in it as well, too. And what was commonplace, like, I remember I didn't do it on my system because at the time I was like, oh, I don't want to give someone else my system. I was stupid. I should have done it anyways. But I remember I grew up in a college town, and there was this one person who told me that there was some dude who lived in the dorms, and if you gave him your Xbox to borrow, if you gave him your Xbox, a hard drive, and $50, he would do some type of mod on there and upgrade the hard drive for you. And then the alluring thing was, you could go, this when Blockbuster was a thing, you could go to Blockbuster and you could rent a game and you could put it in your Xbox and copy it over and then take it back to Blockbuster, and you never have to rent or buy the game after that. Of course, that's majorly fucking illegal. You're pirating a game there, essentially, and then it was kind of the thing where it didn't feel like piracy because you weren't downloading anything. You actually had the disc there, you ripped it over, all that stuff. But then again, in college, when everyone's broke eating ramen and you have a really fast network, sharing is caring, that's essentially what happens. So that's also why peer-to-peer networks most of the time aren't allowed on college campuses, but kind of getting off topic with that. Because the crazy modding scene on here, and because the system came out a year early than any of its competition, the Wii and the PS3 came out a year later. Because of that, I think the modding scene really moved from the original Xbox to the Xbox 360. Then we had drive flashing, which essentially kind of started on this. Near the end of the original Xbox's life cycle, you were able to, it was a closed exploit, like it was private is what I'm trying to say. There was a proof of concept where they did not modify it. They didn't modify, the motherboard, they didn't install custom files or anything. They actually took out the disk drive and were able to flash it with a custom firmware so that you could put in a burned Xbox game and it would work. Normally that did not work. And that transcended over to the 360 because the first drive they tried it with was the Hitachi drives that came with the early models of the 360, because guess what? The later versions of the original Xbox had Hitachi drives on them. They were able to flash them over. Or it might have been Samsung's, I don't remember which one. I was pretty sure it was Hitachi. Someone can correct me on that. Either way, though, drive flashing became a thing. And then later on, we had the King Kong exploit where they were able to, on earlier versions of the dashboard, use the hypervisor exploit through King Kong to run unsigned code. That got killed off pretty quickly. And then Microsoft started using the eFuse technology that they hid in the CPU. You might be asking, what the hell is an eFuse? eFuses are little tiny fuses in the CPU right there, where essentially it's just a value. You have a 0 or a 1. Now I'm going to say 0 is off, 1 is on. What you would do is when you blow an eFuse, you change the value on that eFuse right there, and it is a permanent change. So what happened was, essentially with all these other systems, you could downgrade them and everything. Microsoft put that in place so people would not downgrade their systems or anything like that. And still to this day, you can't take a stock 360 and easily downgrade it. But what happened to prevent that, Microsoft put that in there, and they said, okay, just in case this ever happens, we essentially have this kill code right here to prevent people from downgrading their systems. After that whole hypervisor thing, they immediately started blowing the eFuses with every dashboard. So essentially, if this is your first time hearing about the exploit, more than likely you cannot perform it unless you have a system with a firmware on it from 2005 or early 2006, something like that. It was like the 4000 series dashboard. But either way, then, we got into the JTAG exploit as well, too, where we were able to, 2009, so about 4 years after the system came out, we were able to solder a few things together, reprogram the NAND, boot into a hacked NAND, and then play unsigned code and all that stuff, and do whatever the hell we want to on there. Now, aside from the exploits and all that, because I kind of don't want to, only focus it on that. This thing's glitched, by the way, I'll just say that. Aside from, the exploits there and everything, you also saw Microsoft grab a lot of stuff, and I did a video about this where I'll try and link it in the description, but Bill Gates was impressed with the original Xbox modding scene. That was a whole thing as well, too. And you see that a lot of things like, Kodi, that started out as XBMC, aka Xbox Media Center, started out on this thing, and it had a lot of features that got patched into this thing right here. For example, you're able to install disks and everything, which I thought was awesome, because the system runs cooler, the loading times are faster, puts less stress on the console overall, which is great. And later games that came out on the system actually required you to install parts or the entire game to the console itself. So you had that available right there. You also had, Media Center capabilities available almost out of the box in a completely upgradable system. Because this thing has evolved, honestly, it's evolved more than any other console I've seen. It had it had 5 dashboard revisions. It had the blades, it had NXT, it had Connect. It had, the Connect was like the white looking Wii one. Then it had the first Metro dashboard. Now it has like the current Metro dashboard that we have now. That's kind of Windows 8, Windows 10. So yeah, it had 5 like overall UI changes, which is absolutely insane. Granted, some people like them, some people don't. My favorite was the second one, the NXT, like the green one. It ran so well. It had awesome features. They didn't throw, you know, they didn't throw ads down your throat, which was really nice as well too. It was the most customizable. It was great overall. There were also a lot of new things as well too, where they brought party chat into the system. Netflix parties were a thing, and then they were canceled off as well later on for some type of reason. I'm not really sure. But you saw this thing evolve into a multimedia console. Where you had video streaming, you could play things off the flash drives right here. You had so much available. And granted, a lot of people also kind of look at that as a demise of the 360 overall, because essentially now the Xbox One is supposed to be, you know, the one thing that you have for, you know, all your multimedia and gaming purposes. They were kind of trying to start that out on the 360, and they kind of did it in a beta fashion, as I said, because this thing straight up just played games. This thing played games, but also had a bunch of other multimedia capabilities patched into it, and they tried to all kind of bake that into the Xbox One on launch, which is really neat to see. But I think the Xbox 360 did a pretty good job, you know, implementing that in. So with that, you know, it is what it is on there. Personally, I think they went a little bit too far with it, but, you know, too late for that now at this point. But this thing right here, the reason why I have this controller out isn't just for show. It's because this actually did something pretty crazy. This kind of set the standard for controllers, and by that, this is essentially the standard for PC games if you use a controller. I did not missay that. I didn't say that improperly. I tried to say that improperly, but no. I said PC. Because if you think about it, after the 360 came out, right? You look at almost any PC game out right now, and if it has native gamepad support, you know what gamepad is supported? This thing. They show you a picture of an Xbox 360 controller on screen. Prior to that, there was not really a standard gamepad that was used on the PC, and it's because this thing, they did it properly. It fits in your hand really well. It's super comfortable. It's functional enough as is. I mean, it worked out really well, and it was readily available. Now, essentially, the only thing that there might be an issue with is, you know, if you fire up a brand new game and it doesn't have the Xbox 360 controller, it has the Xbox One controller on it. But that's mostly because, you know, people are saying, oh yeah, the 360, the One is going to be the next thing after that. So, I mean, that happened as well. But this thing, I'm telling you, man, this thing revolutionized just, you know, controllers on the PC, which was absolutely crazy to see, and I don't think anybody would have seen that coming, but this really set the standard on that. And it's just a good controller overall. They didn't have to do multiple variants of it either. This was the controller really to the end. Yes, they did some minor changes here and there on it, and, you know, some build quality things, but aside from that, they didn't go from, like, you know, the original Xbox Duke controller to the Controller S or anything like that. Now, the system also had several failures. You know, aside from the general hardware failure, it had the HD DVD drive, which even I myself, man, like, I don't like the PS3, I really don't, but I did not like the PS3 even more at that time, and even I myself, I was like, why the hell would Microsoft not make a Blu-ray drive for this thing? That doesn't make any sense. Of course, there was a whole thing of politics there, but the HD DVD completely flopped. The Xbox Live Vision camera, most people didn't even really know it was a thing. And I'm not talking about the Kinect. The Kinect is a whole other camera that came after that, and the Kinect just no. That's all I can really say on that. Like, it was hyped up, and then a lot of people bought it, and then it kind of just sat there. Like, even I myself, I've owned a few Kinect devices, and I just end up not using them. So now I have one in my collection, and that's about it. They didn't really do that well, and I think Microsoft's kind of even seeing now with the Xbox One, people don't really want that too much. Yeah, there's people that love the Kinect, and if you do, that's awesome. Even I myself think it's a useful device, but even I myself, I'm looking at my Kinect behind the camera for the Xbox One. I don't really use the thing. I mean, sometimes I talk to it, like I'm just like, say, Xbox go home, Xbox do this, whatever it is, but aside from that, I really don't mess with it. And I think it's because people just would rather have a controller at the end of the day. So it works out well enough for that too. But some positives they had on the system as well is, you know, as I said, you know, the the eventual add of, HDMI right there. You now have HDMI on every Xbox 360 except for, the Opus and the Xenon models, but even so, I wouldn't recommend getting those at all. Thanks for driving by really fast. But yeah, no, you have that available, so this thing is ready to go on modern televisions and anything like that. And for a console that was, originally manufactured in 2005, that's astounding. I mean, yes, the original Xbox, this puts out a nice clean HD signal up to 1080i. The only issue with that is that you have to use component, which component's kind of going away too. Yeah, there's TVs that support it, like my new TV does support it, but I would rather have HDMI at the end of the day, and this thing has it available right there. That was actually something I remember. I got my Xbox 360 with HDMI before I even had an HD TV. And oh my god, HD gaming, this thing really set the standard for that too. Not even only that, it was the PS3 as well. Because granted, the 6th generation of systems, you could do HD on there, but it was either like 480p or sometimes some of the games, like on the Xbox especially, some of them were like 720. But this system right here, pretty much everything stayed at that. I mean, they even patched in 1080p into the system later on. That still impresses me, because when this system came out, it maxed out at 1080i. They eventually patched 1080p into that, which I thought was pretty neat. And even with that, one thing to go further is Quake 4 was one of the first games I bought on the 360, right? It came with a playable copy of Quake 2 on it. Now, I didn't know about this. Now, Quake 2, it's not a super impressive game, but at the time, as I said, the 360 at launch did not support 1080p. The game can run in 1080p 60 frames on the 360 version. Like, it can natively run at that. And I just find that astounding. It's like, really? It's running, it was a launch game, and it can run at a resolution that was higher than the intended launch resolution. I just find that absolutely astounding on there. Again, Quake 2, it's not a super impressive game, graphics-wise or anything like that, but still, that's so neat to see. Digital Foundry, as I said, they were the ones who did a video analysis on that. But really, even if the system is not being manufactured anymore, you still have a great system that works, and it's still somewhat future-proofed. Like, granted, in the next 5 years, yeah, people probably won't want to play the 360 as much, but it's going to be a lot easier to mess with a HDMI, output right there over a composite or component or S-video or anything like that. So that's been really neat to see as well, too. These things are HD ready. They're good to go. And as I said, this thing also really introduced me to HD gaming, because at the time I really wasn't playing on PC all that much. I didn't really understand what HD was. I didn't get this thing. And I had a tube TV that I hooked this thing up to, and I was hooking up in composite, so that was 480i at best. But I remember even, there was one time, this is the place, before I started working at the game store, I was there and I played a copy of Burnout Paradise. Yeah, Burnout Paradise on their 1080p TV. I remember it looked really good. Like, it looked really good. And then I remember I bought it because it was like a $15 game, took it home, popped it in my 360 there, and I remember just playing it. I'm like, this game's fun, but it just doesn't look as good, man. Like, I wish I had an HD TV. That was the first time I really wanted to go HD on that, because before then, I was cool, but after seeing that, that was awesome. And even, games like, for example, Gears of War, the original Gears of War. I remember playing that game on my standard definition TV, and I wasn't that impressed with how it looked. Like, people were just freaking out about how good the game looks. I'm like, it looks okay. Then I remember I played it when I had an HD TV. I was like, oh my god. You're telling me this game came out in 2006? It looked incredible. And it's awesome that they could do it with a system like this. I mean, I don't know what the CPU specs are on here, but this thing only has 512 megabytes of RAM, which is not that much, but back then, I mean, it worked out well enough, and even with that as well, too, from what I know at least, because I didn't have one on launch, but from what I've been told and from what I've heard and read, this system, when it first came out, there was nothing on the PC market that could touch this system graphically for about 3 or 4 months. So, granted, there were several 360s that died within the first 3 months, and this thing had a 3-month warranty when it first came out. 3 months, that was it. And they had extended out so much longer to 3 years, because you kind of needed that, because these things were death traps. They would eventually die. That's why I got an extended warranty on mine. But what I'm trying to say here is, you had that available right there, and it's just impressive that they were future-proofing it to that degree. Like, still, like, even now, yes, we are, we're spoiled with PC and all that. We got 4K, 8K is going to be coming out at one point. We have all this other stuff. We can play at 144, frames per second and everything like that, or 144 hertz technically. But no, we have all that available. And still, like, I look at some games on the 360, like some of the launch titles and everything, especially like Gears of War, and I'm like, wow, system can really do that. That is so impressive. So you got to give it a lot of credit for that. Now, personally, let's say in some imaginary land, I was in charge of the Xbox 360, right? I can't bring it back, it's no longer being manufactured, and it is what it is. But I guess what would I have done differently, even if it cost, jacked up the price or anything like that? My ideal system, honestly, would have been, make sure, first off, you're not rushing the system. So that even means if you have to put it out later, that's fine. Make sure it's actually working and all that. HDMI would have been great as well too, because the PS3 had that available. Wireless, which this system has built in. These systems do not. You had to buy an external dongle for that as well too. The hard drive, that thing was fine on there. But one thing that I have said before, which I think would have been good, not only for, I would say honestly, better quality games, but also, to kind of lessen piracy on the 360 as well too, was that they used just dual layer DVDs. That was it. That's also what the PS2 and the original Xbox used. What would have been nice was if they would have decided to use the HD DVD format for games. Now, it sounds a little bit odd because you just think of it as this failed video format, but that was, I want to say, it was like no, not the same, excuse me. It was like half the size of a Blu-ray disc, which would have helped out, honestly. I don't know if they would have had to do multiple for, multi-disc games or anything like that, but I think it could have been neat in some way to have its own kind of standard-ish format. And also, HD DVD wasn't really a thing with that. Aside from that, though, I mean, as a video format, it would have failed, but maybe it would have been a bit more successful if it was being used for actual games development, anything like that, because really what it was just a bigger DVD with more space and everything like that. So would have been interesting to see that. But then again, dual layer DVDs did cost less, so I understand that. But really, just upping the reliability on there, HD, well, not HD DVD, maybe having the HD DVD thing on there, possibly. Everything else, that I had said on that. But one thing would have been, it would have been awesome to have selectable dashboards on there. And by that I mean, I still want to use the NXE dashboard. That's honestly my favorite dashboard. Some people like the Kinect dashboard. Some people like the Blade dashboard. I think it would have been cool if you could have selected what you wanted. I understand Microsoft wanted to do a whole unified platform and everything like that, but it was just annoying that it went through so many changes in that time frame, and at the same time, it was just like, okay, so I can't really do this. I don't really have an option in this. That's great. Thanks for that. Also, maybe less on the peripherals as well, too. Like, some things, even for example, the Kinect, it's the weirdest thing. The Vision camera, which is a shitty webcam, right? The Vision camera, you can take photos and use them as, your Xbox Live profile picture and all that stuff. You can't do that with the Kinect. And you can't send photos either, which I never understood. I don't get that. The Kinect thing, I mean, it was a cool idea, but it wasn't handled all that well, and you're still seeing it here. So I don't know what they were really trying to do with that. I mean, they even went as far as to, on the back of this system right here, there's a specific Kinect port so that you have enough power on the system, just plug up your Kinect, and you don't need to have a AC adapter or anything like that. But I will say, overall, this is a truly revolutionary system. Yes, as I said multiple times, I point out in this video, it's had its faults, it's had its stumbles along the way. And one person I was talking to had said, people are going to say the PlayStation 2 was so much better than this thing, but, just wait a few years, it's going to change. And in a way, I kind of believe that as well, too. Granted, there were, several faults that did hold this thing back, and the PS2, really, it seems perfect on its own, but as it ages and everything, you see, like, for example, man, it would have been nice if games had, better options for progressive scan. If the output was better on there, because yes, it does technically put out progressive scan, and it can do HD in some instances. Problem is the output itself, the quality of the output itself on the PS2 is not that good. Even if you run it at HD, it doesn't look that good. Like, run a PS2 at HD and run the original Xbox at HD, and you'll see that this thing just looks so much cleaner and sharper. And it's because of the actual like output quality on that system as well. So that was the thing with that. But this thing, I mean, it's future-proof. It has the digital output. It's good to go. You have a multitude of different output features on here. Plus, you can always use it as a multimedia device, whether it be through USB, through video streaming, through DVDs, anything like that. It would have been cool if it had Blu-ray support. I mean, that would be absolutely awesome. But then again, Blu-ray was like Sony's thing, even though it's not exclusively Sony, but I understand why they didn't want to do that. But they adopted it, as you could see on the Xbox One, so that has Blu-rays available on it, which works out pretty well, and that's what I wanted on the Xbox One. But there's even things on here that I like more than the Xbox One. I like the interface on here more. It's basic. It's snappy enough. It gets the job done. It works. It also has a pretty nice game selection on it as well, too, which granted, you know, this new generation, everything, we're getting more games now, so that's just kind of a thing that comes with it. But the 360 has such a huge library. You can have offline accounts on it as well, too, which is really nice. The system is still mostly usable if you take it offline. The controller, many times I do prefer the Xbox 360 controller over the Xbox One controller. And overall, you know, I think with the later revisions of these systems and with this thing right here, they got it done. Like, they were able to put this system, you know, in a pretty nice form factor and everything, like a small form factor, and it's able to run quite well. Also, you know, the disk drive got fixed up on here and everything and redone, so it's much quieter. It doesn't sound like a jet engine anymore. But no, there were quite a few things that they did right on this, you know, near the end of the system's life cycle. So even though they're decommissioning the system, they're not manufacturing it anymore, I still think it's a great system overall, and I think it still has life to it. You know, even if new games aren't coming to it or anything like that, I'm still going to have it hooked up to my media center right there. Like my whole center in my living room, I'm just looking at them there. I got my Wii U, PS4, Xbox One, and then right next to them I have the 360. Behind that I have the PS3 whenever I want to play like a PS1 game or anything like that. But aside from that, no, they did such an awesome job with this thing. And with the onset of modding and everything as well too, when these systems are eventually, you know, Xbox Live servers are taken down and they're not supported anymore, these things are pretty awesome to mod too. Not only for flashing the drive and all that, but also, you know, RJ tags, J tags, reset glitch hacks, anything like that. So you have a completely cracked open system and everything, and you can run games region free and all that. And it had selectable regions because it was more based on the game's code, what was in there. But that's going to be really neat as well too. So if you're seeing this like in the future, like this video is still up, and if this video is still up, you know, like 5 years, and let's say the servers are down, mod your Xbox 360. Seriously, get more longevity out of it. Looking to reset glitch hacks, anything like that. Hell, this video will probably be so outdated, there might be something where you can just download some files and put them on a flash drive, put them into your system, boot it up, and then it just mods your system right there. So that might happen as well too, but I fully condone doing that, honestly. Like, my personal opinion is just like, yo, when these systems are completely taken offline, just mod it the hell up, man, because that's really all you can do with it at that point, and it doesn't matter if you get banned at that point, you know? It won't matter. There's not going to be an online service. The last thing I want to say here too is, a lot of people I remember used to say, oh, I predict the PS3 and Xbox 360 servers will be taken down in 2016. No, I don't think so. I really don't think so. If they are just now decommissioning the Xbox 360 and they're planning to keep these servers online for some time, I really don't think that's going to happen. I mean, even the original Xbox, you look at that, right? It was essentially discontinued in about 2005, 2006. They stopped production on this quick. This was costing Microsoft way too much money to maintain. They stopped production on this thing really quick, and they took down the servers. Halo Reach was out at that time. And Halo Reach, I want to say, came out 2010? I didn't like Halo Reach that much, so that's why that's like one of the Halos I barely know anything about. But no, I want to say that came out in like 2010. So, you know, this system came out 2001, was superseded in 2005, discontinued sometime 2005, 2006, and, you know, it had its online servers for several years. Granted, Xbox Live did come after this, but even so, I think this thing still has a few years of life under its belt. But the thing is, I can also see why Microsoft has decommissioned this, because I'm sure 360 sales aren't doing that well. Of course, you know, 3 years into the new game system life cycles. And also at the same time, I'm sure Microsoft is really trying to push backwards compatibility. But the problem is, again, if you're seeing this in the future, you're thinking about getting an Xbox 360, you're looking at the library, get an Xbox 360. I'm sure they're cheap enough at this point. Plus, Microsoft, there's several games that they won't be able to put onto backwards compatibility when it comes to any type of, copyright stuff. They might be modified. They might not be able to get a hold of the copyright holders or anything like that. Compatibility issues as well, too, because it's still emulation on there. Really, if you want to get the perfect experience, it's kind of one of those things. Go back to the original system, unless emulation is completely taken off on it. I think I've rambled enough on it at this point, though. As you could see, I've enjoyed my time with the Xbox 360. It's done a lot for me, man. Got me back into gaming at a point when I wasn't into gaming. I stopped playing on it for a while. Got back into it because of modding. It got me back into the modding scene as well, too. And there's so much stuff you can do with it, man. Especially the game library is great on there, too. You're still getting free games through Games for Xbox Live Gold and all that stuff. It's great, man. So, 360... you will be missed, but you're not going anywhere. You're still sticking around here and everything. Because some people have asked me, I remember people asked me right when backwards compatibility comes out. They're just like, hey, so since backwards compatibility is out on the Xbox One, are you going to sell your 360? It's like, no. Why would I? So that was kind of it. Of course, it was probably much more shorter and less awkward than that, but I don't know why people would want to immediately sell off their system, because, as I said, I do like, lightly collecting games and everything, and also I like having the original hardware as well, too. So, yeah, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching and listening to my rambles and everything, everyone, and if you enjoyed this video, there's a like button down below, and if you didn't like it, it was too long, anything like that, you completely disagreed with me, there's also a dislike button as well, too, that you can hit. So, thanks for making it to the end of the video.